All right, welcome everybody to a fantastic Wednesday in critical thinking. Today we're going to be talking about qualifiers. Qualifiers are the words that you use to strengthen or weaken the claim of a sentence. For example, if you say that all X or Y, that's a much stronger claim than some X or Y. Or you can say many X or Y, or so on and so forth. So this is going to tie in with your capstone essay. The capstone essay was posted last night, and the capstone essay is also going to tie in with the quiz from last time. So we're going to go over the two of these things. So the capstone essay, the prompt is you're going to imagine that you are an investigative reporter investigating an open question in our society, something that we don't have settled. And for example, the question of COVID-19, the origins of COVID-19. We don't know. There's competing theories right now. There's no settled answer to it. Other things would be women getting paid 90 cents on the dollar as men. Some people consider this complete fact. Some people consider it complete myth. So it's an open question. Which one's right? It's your job to dig into it. Find primary sources wherever you can and present those primary sources. You need at least 3 primary sources. You'll get 1 point per primary source. You can have more if you want, and you can have secondary sources if you want. A secondary source would be a third-party person, giving their take on the issue. And those don't count beyond the three points, though. So you can have a bibliography of 20 if you want. You'll get at most 3 points for it. Primary sources are the gold standard, okay? And then you are going to look into the claim, and you're going to give me a confidence level that you think the claim is true. And your essay is basically going to be supporting this notion. It's like a persuasive essay, somewhat, and an informative essay, somewhat. Secondary doesn't get you extra points, correct? We're looking for primary sources. You're more than welcome to quote. If you quote somebody, you have to cite them, right? But they don't give you points. We're looking for primary sources. That is the gold standard, okay? With one exception being if a secondary source is if it's in a really technical subject, then you can use somebody an expert's analysis on it to explain the subject, and I'll accept that as a primary source as well, even though it's not as good as an actual primary source. And then you're going to tell me how confident you are the proposition is true. So, for example, the death of Jeffrey Epstein, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with this guy. He's a real creep. Used to fly people to the Caribbean to sexually assault people, and he died while he was in prison in New York. And due to these circumstances, a lot of people think that he was murdered instead of committing suicide. So the official cause of death is suicide. However, as William Barr said, his death was a perfect storm of screw-ups. So you had an issue with the guards sleeping while they were on duty and then falsifying their records, saying that they weren't sleeping. You had cameras that were on his quarter not working at the time of his death. The guards were actually charged with records violations. The official autopsy, said that he was, he killed himself. However, another autopsy person and medical examiner said that the bones that were broken in his body were consistent with those when somebody strangles you. And so, do I think that he was murdered? Not really. I don't think that, here's the building, right? If the camera in your corridor isn't working, the other cameras were working, and so people can't just teleport into a building like this, right? And the only way of getting around inside of a prison, there's not even buttons on an elevator. When you walk into an elevator in a jail, there's cameras everywhere, and people see everything that's happening inside of there. And you actually say to the camera, "Hey, please take me to the fourth floor," and they will move you for you. It seems pretty implausible that somebody was able to disable just the one camera in front of the cell and get in somehow without being seen. Otherwise, the only theory that might work is if those guards actually murdered him. Seems hard to believe, though. So I'm not actually suggesting that he was murdered, but it is, for the purposes of a capstone essay, an open question, right? And you can present the primary data. Here's the autopsy reports. Here are the competing autopsy reports. One saying suicide, one saying murder. And you can talk about the cameras. You can talk about the guards and all that other stuff. And then at the end of the day, you can present your conclusion saying, I'm 40% confident that he was murdered, something like that. Him being murdered is considered a conspiracy theory, which is a little bit, it's a little bit dubious to me, right? Like, it's like when you have actual positive evidence for something, like I think it's a little bit ungracious to call it a conspiracy theory, because even though I don't actually think that he was murdered. I think there's a possibility he was murdered, but I don't think it's a great one, because I don't see any plausible way that somebody could have gone in to kill him. Most Americans believe that he was murdered and not suicided, or he was suicided. He didn't commit suicide. More people think that he was killed than not. And so it's a bit odd calling it a conspiracy theory. Like when you have a medical examiner ruling that it was homicide, like it's not a conspiracy theory, in my opinion, to say that it was homicide. You know what I mean? Like you've got a medical expert saying, yeah, this guy was strangled to death. Like it's not a conspiracy theory at that point. It could be wrong. Like, and I do actually think that it was wrong that he was murdered, but I think it's very ungracious to call it a conspiracy theory, and that like kind of connects to like the lab leak theory for COVID-19. Like there's pretty good evidence that it's not true, but there's still some evidence that it is, and so calling it a conspiracy theory seems to be like trying to declare victory in a debate when there's still an open question, and I consider such tactics to be a bit sus, and we talked about this before in the semester. It's like, why was Twitter censoring alternative theories on the COVID-19 origin, right? Why was Facebook? Why was YouTube? It's always been a plausible theory because of the Wuhan Institute of Virology being in Wuhan. Like it was never a wild, outlandish theory. It's like, it's always been reasonable, in one form or another. Like they might have captured an animal from the wild and that infected, people. Like it doesn't have to be like, some sort of like intentional bioweapons release kind of thing. There's a lot of possibilities as to why there was a coronavirus release from the lab that studied coronaviruses in Wuhan. So there's no essay format, no. And so again, it's not like I'm claiming it was a lab leak. I find it very suspicious that like Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all these other people were censoring a viewpoint that is not entirely unreasonable. It's an open question. And anytime you have an open question, you need to have debate and dialogue over it rather than censorship and threatening. This is the essay you will turn in to your ePortfolio, yes. So what you're going to do is go to the ePortfolio site after you send it in. After you send it in here, you're going to turn it in twice. Okay, so you're going to submit it here on the discussion forum. The essay is going to go in here. You're also going to put it on the ePortfolio site to get your GE requirement done. Okay, it's got to be 1,000 words, which is about 4 pages. Not too bad. Any of these interesting topics, you should be able to get 4 pages out of, right? So, okay. So how you're going to get your points? You get 3 points for your primary sources on the topic. You're going to get 5 points for putting a deductive argument somewhere within your argument. A deductive argument would be something like, let's look at the last quiz. All airplane pilots fly planes. When you fly a plane, you go through the air. Therefore, all airplane pilots go through the air. That is deductive reasoning. That is the reasoning we've been using in the beginning part of this class. Okay. When you do so in your essay, you are going to tag it. You must tag it with a footnote saying deductive argument, or you will not get credit for it. Okay. And every semester, students forget to do this, and you need to go to references, add footnote, www.fresnostate.edu. Come up here, add footnote, college.edu. Right, so what you're going to do is you're going to do a footnote and say, this is my deductive argument. And then when you do your, and then Google Docs, it's similar. You go to insert and add footnote. And then when you do your inductive argument, you must also tag it with a footnote saying inductive argument. And when you make your abductive argument, you have to tag it with abductive argument. To get your 15 points, which is most of the points on this essay, and this essay is 10% of your grade, this essay is worth as much as the final, you must tag your arguments. And every semester I have students that don't do it, they don't get the points. They're like, why didn't I get the points? And the answer is because you didn't read. One of the best ways of succeeding in life is to read instructions carefully. I've written many grants in my life. I've even scored grants for the state of California. And the number one thing is can you read the directions and answer the questions that are being asked? And you get 0 points if you answer a different question or if you don't answer the question at all. So make sure you read these directions carefully and follow them. Okay. So inductive arguments would be like this one on our quiz last time, where you have experience with the past applies to the future. So I applied to 10 jobs. I lost all of them. Therefore, it's pointless for me to apply to anymore. That kind of stuff. So that's inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is looking at the past to make a claim about the future, essentially. And this is also catastrophic thinking. The person's exhibiting I know I'm going to fail. The essay is due at the beginning of finals week. It'll be due technically at midnight before Monday on finals week. And then you will have until Thursday of finals week to do the peer review. That's why we can't make the due date any later, is because you need time to do the peer review. Okay. And so the final 2 points are for you peer reviewing somebody else's essay. If you turn your essay in late, you're not going to be able to participate in peer review because you didn't give your peer reviewers enough time to do the peer review. Also, you will suffer the late penalty as well on top of it. And so what you do for the peer review is you will look at their 3 arguments that they've tagged: inductive, deductive, and abductive. If any of them are missing, it's easy for you. Just they didn't tag it. Okay, give me a point. Easy. But for each one they do tag, you need to look at their argument and say, yes, that is in fact a deductive argument or whatever. Or no, you made a inductive argument and tagged it as deductive argument. And in order to give you guys a little skin in the game, because in past years, students would just be like, "Oh, it looks fine to me." What's the point of doing peer review if you don't even read it? I had one student last semester write his essay using ChatGPT. He asked me for permission, and his essay had a paragraph in it saying this paragraph was the only paragraph actually written by a human. And of the people that did the peer review, I think 3 people peer reviewed him. Only one of them actually read that. The other 2 were like, hey, great writing, great job, whatever, just meaningless platitudes. And so in order to give you guys a little skin in the game and make sure you actually read the thing, if you get it wrong, if you say, yes, that is a deductive argument, and it wasn't, you lose your point for the peer review. So make sure that you get all three of them right. That if it's abductive, you say, yep, that's abductive. If they screw up on the inductive, say, nope, that's not inductive, And so this will encourage you. It'll light a little fire under you to actually read their essay very carefully and to determine if the arguments are in fact the arguments they claim they are. And that is 20 points. That is 10% of your grade. So make sure you guys get started on that right now. It's 4 pages, not the end of the world. Okay. And then finally, we have here abductive reasoning. So an abductive reasoning on like the murder of supposed murder of Jeffrey Epstein would be, supporting the fact he was murdered would be, the security cameras weren't on, security guards were sleeping and forged their records saying they were awake, and the autopsy showing, concluding that it was homicide. On the con side, all the other security cameras were working, didn't show anybody going in or out. The dude was suicidal, arguably. He was on suicide watch, although his lawyer said he wasn't suicidal. And a different autopsy showed no evidence of foul play. So, that, and then you rule on that. I'm 40%, I'm 30%, whatever, based on the evidence. And that's abductive reasoning. And this is basically what you're going to be doing for your essay. So pick a topic that interests you. Don't pick, the one that I did here because I've already done it for you. Pick something else. And it doesn't have to be conspiracy theory. It could be any open question in our society. Like the women wages thing. That's a fairly hot, controversial topic, right? And so that could be something you can dig into, and that ties into like social issues in computer science and things like that. So our lecture is on qualifiers. And qualifiers are essentially what we're just talking about. Like if you're 30% certain in something, if you're 90% certain in something, that's a qualifier. Other qualifiers are for amounts of things. So for example, there are many supermarkets in San Francisco. There are a lot of supermarkets in San Francisco. There are not many. There's a few. There's some. There's none. You guys understand? Like these words that we use, some, none, all, many, a few, a lot, a little. These are called qualifiers. And so, for example, if you want to be academic, if you want to be precise in your speech, if you want to be better than the people on the internet, then you use qualifiers properly. Like this is to me one of the primary signs that somebody is a sophisticated thinker, that they are academically inclined, they're not a moron, they're not an internet troll, because people on the internet drop qualifiers all day long, right? There's basically no supermarkets in San Francisco. Oh yeah? Well, there's a Safeway on Market Street. Yeah, so that's one. Yeah, but you said there's no supermarkets. I didn't say that. I said there's basically none. That's not the same thing as none. So the people on the internet have really hard time dealing with anything other than 100% or 0%. Black and white thinking is the thinking of the internet. And so, if you have subtlety and nuance in your speech, in your claims, that makes you academic. It makes you a sophisticated thinker. And people on the internet will probably drive you crazy because they cannot handle nuance by and large. So here's some qualifiers: none, some, almost none, generally speaking, almost all, a few, a lot, a little. These are all qualifiers, and we use them to say this is 20%, 80%, 50%, instead of just 100 and nothing. Okay. And this is really important in academia. It is not important if you're going to go into the media. Right? So like, take let's see here. Take this claim here. San Francisco puts entire department on lockdown amid shoplifting crisis, right? And you can watch these videos and you can see that, you can see it. Yeah, but here, right here, you can see that part there is not on lockdown, right? So San Francisco Target puts entire inventory on lockdown, right? Entire inventory, 100% of it's in. You can actually see right here. Let me maybe full screen that for you. That this is a section of the Target. I'm not defending San Francisco, by the way, but you can see right here. It's not the entire story. Like even in the video, this is why primary sources are so important. If you get a secondary source where, you know, somebody's given their opinion on the matter, there's a good you know, chance that they have already black and white fallacied it. They've eliminated subtlety and nuance. They're saying the entire inventory is on lockdown. It's not. You can see it. You can see it right here. You haven't unlocked that weapon yet. That's funny. So yeah, it's like you're in a video game. Like this is their you need the license if you've played what was it, Final Fantasy something or other. You have to get licenses to be able to wear a hat. Until you purchase the license, like you just can't figure out how to wear a hat. It's just not possible. So you'd see shampoo and mouthwash and razors and things like that are all stuck behind I don't know what's going on here. Okay. So, oh my gosh. What is happening here? Okay. So so you can see, right, like the qualifier, right, is it entire, you know, they claimed the entire inventory is on lockdown, right? Because of shoplifting, right? Couldn't you just ask for the item and shoplifted anyway, right? Yeah. Could you bring me some mouthwash? And you just run out of the store. And they're like, bro, come on. So did they have to ask the employee to unlock everything? Yes. Yeah, they do. Now, Target says it's not the entire store. It is just the sections in the back where they don't have people watching 24/7. But you can still, like the essential claim is correct, right? Like they're taking pretty extreme anti-shoplifting measures, right? Like Whole Foods closed in part due to shoplifting concerns. Steal the whole cabinet. Think smarter, not harder. Yeah, just come in there with a welding torch and just take out you've just made it more transportable, right, Ismail? Right? Like just you put everything into the thing, you just load it up into your truck, and now you've got the entire inventory in a nice, convenient box. You know, they've already they've boxed it up for you. You know, it's great. Yeah, it's amazing. They aren't allowed to chase down the person that stole. That's right. Yeah, a friend of mine was a security guard and got fired for tackling a person that was shoplifting out of the store. Does it work? I don't know. Apparently, like it costs money to put in all of those anti-shoplifting measures. So I assume the stores have done the math and, you know, a little bit of algebra, you know, the shoplifting rate times the price of the item minus, you know. What happens if a bystander stops a shoplifter? Still legal trouble? I don't know. That's a good question. You know, people have the right to do a citizen's arrest, and I guess you could tackle them and call the police. Sure. People just probably shop more online to pick up. Yeah, and that seems a little bit more reasonable to me. Like you just place your order in advance, then go into the front and pick your order. Because there's no way that you'd find me sitting around hitting a button like, "Come on, Daddy needs some floss," you know. And then they leave. And I'm like, "Oh shoot, I need a toothbrush now." Like, I'm not gonna put up with that. So the media, of course, why not have cameras on every aisle, security at the front door to check you? You're asking good questions. I mean, they, you know, when I lived in San Francisco, like they would have like an off-duty police officer just kind of sitting in a chair, you know, like by the front door, you know, it's kind of like looking at people. The trouble is like they don't actually do anything. Like if you shoplift, and the shoplifters have figured out. It's kind of like at my college, at Clovis Community College. Right now, we don't have parking permits, right, because of the coronavirus. Yeah, they do have people there, but they don't do anything about them running out of the store yet. And so, like at our college, we don't have parking permits right now. So students have realized they could just park in staff parking and they don't get a ticket. There's no parking enforcement right now. And so, like a lot of times, I'll show up for school and all of these staff parking spots are taken by students. And I see these like 17-year-olds like getting out of the car. I'm like, yeah, in a staff spot. You know, it's like, yeah, okay, you're the, you know, what class are you teaching there? Econ. What's your graduate degree in? You know, like, you know, I didn't go to grad school to park in student parking like a peon, man. You know. So if it's under 950, it's not a felony. Yeah. So I saw this one mini mart. They priced up all of their items to $950. So like if you want to buy a chocolate bar, it costs $951, and then there's a coupon next to it for $950 off. So you get a discount it back down to $1 or something. So they priced everything up high enough that if you stole even a chocolate bar, it would be a felony. Modern problems require modern solutions. Okay. Yeah, but like if you look at these put peanut butter on their door handle. I'm not gonna get into a prank war with my students. Instead, I just look disapprovingly at them. And they kind of go, yeah. Their signs, yeah, it's all marked. Like it says faculty parking, like, like there's, yeah, it says, but like they know because like the school made a mistake and announced we're not enforcing parking this semester. So everyone's like, oh really? No parking enforcement at all? Interesting. So, but what's interesting is that nobody ever parks in the president's spot. So there's a separate spot for the college president. Nobody parks in that one. And I'm like, why is that? It's kind of interesting. So you're very disappointed in them in a dad voice. Yeah. Oh, yes, free parking. Right. And so there's always that one spot available there, but none of them seem to have like the guts to actually park in the marked president's spot. You'll be the first. Should put up a reserve sign with your name on it. That's a great idea. Yeah. Just spray paint like reserved for Bill Kearney, on the thing. That'd be amazing. The associated students actually have signs where they can like reserve parking because like they have speakers come in, so they'll like put up a sign saying reserved parking. Maybe I should do that. What did Sheldon do in The Big Bang Theory? Anyway, so like the media has troubles with qualifiers, right? Like the media, really have they're homeless everywhere in San Francisco. Are there? On every atom, there's homeless, and like there's a lot of homeless. Like don't get me wrong, but like everywhere, like in every atom of the street, there's homeless. No, it's exaggeration, right? 100% or nothing, right? Put his office on his parking spot. That's amazing. Okay. Right. Or like, is anyone here from like Chicago or Detroit? Like when I talk to my friends from those cities, they say the media portrayal of them is that, like Chicago is the murder capital of the world. People are getting just gunned down in the streets left and right. Detroit is this fallen hellhole where, it's all ruins and mold and Little Caesars. And, because Little Caesars is from Detroit, right? And Rocket Mortgage. And they're like, yeah, it's not as it is portrayed in the media. Like the media loves to exaggerate things because it makes for a good story. I mean, I lived in San Francisco for 4 years. I almost got carjacked when I was in San Francisco. Like I'm not claiming it's zero. I'm not at all. Like there are parts of San Francisco that like I don't want to be in or near, like for sure. But at the same time, like where I lived, like it was nice. Like it was, and I've gone back and visited. It's still nice. Like it's not this post-apocalyptic Mad Max, hellhole that people make it out to be. It's not 100%. It's not 0%. It's somewhere in the middle, and that just doesn't make for a good story, in the media. So the media is especially bad with qualifiers also. And people on the internet are bad with qualifiers also, broadly speaking. Okay, so to go back to where we were at the beginning of the semester, when you make an argument, you're making a claim, you support it with evidence, and you can have better evidence or worse evidence. And the more evidence you have, the more confident people will be in the claim. Okay. And like if you directly see somebody shoot somebody else and murder them like right in front of your face, that's pretty compelling evidence. All right, that guy's a murderer, Whereas, if you just hear somebody online saying something, like, that's pretty weak evidence, right? Like, you just read you're on a, you know, Second Amendment forum, and somebody says, "Oh, Obama's gonna come after our guns," and they're gonna, it's like, okay, is he? Like that's about as weak a claim as you can get. Somebody just like kind of like mouthing off and just guessing and things like that. That's basically not worth anything. And so, your capstone essay is going to be: here's the evidence for, here's the evidence against, here is between 0 and 100%. Here's how confident I am the claim is true. Yeah. So, in the law, we have these things called standards of evidence. I'm not a lawyer. Don't take me too seriously. But I do think that every person should, at some point, like, study the law at least a little bit. And it'll save your bacon someday, in my opinion. You don't need to be a lawyer to, like, know to get things in writing, for example. Like, if somebody's saying something dubious to you, be like, "Hey, could you send that to me on email?" Now you have a record of it. Now you have a copy of it. And if it's your work email, you back it up on your personal email, or you take a screenshot of it or something, so that if they fire you and delete the email and claim that it never happened, then you can be like, "Here it is. Oh, and by the way, the judge is going to be really interested in the fact that you've been deleting evidence." So, having at least like a conversational, like, proficiency with the law is something I think every person should have. Okay. So, standards of evidence. And so there's different standards of evidence in law and in argumentation and in real life. So the lowest level is like reasonable suspicion. So this is like, I don't know, like 10% confident that somebody did something, right? Like, you heard something, it might be a gunshot, it might have been a car backfiring, but you're like, that sounded kind of like a gunshot to me coming from that car. That's enough reasonable suspicion for you to pull them over. Like, cops are not supposed to pull you over just cuz. Especially like pulling people over because they're black, right? Like, Will Smith got pulled over because he was a black guy driving a nice car, right? It's like, oh, he must be a drug dealer, right? You're not supposed to do that. That's not constitutional. The Fourth Amendment protects us from unreasonable searches and seizures. And so, but you hear a gunshot. It might have been a gunshot. Not really sure. I don't know. It might be enough for you to pull them over and talk to them. Be like, "Hey, could I see your ID? What are you guys up to? Take a visual inspection of the car. Now, if you see that somebody has a gun on their lap, then you're like, okay, it's go time now. Like, negligent discharge, whatever, attempted murder, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, like, if you want to just like detain somebody and, like, ask them for their name and what they're up to, you're not really supposed to do that unless you have a reason. That's one of the things that, like, New York was getting into trouble for. If a police officer asks to search your car, you can decline. Yeah, just be like, "Nope, I decline." Why? Because I believe in civil liberties in America, and I don't think that unless I am an American who enjoys exercising his civil liberties. I'm sure you understand, officer. Something like that. Be nice about it. If you're rude to a cop, there's a good chance they're going to make your life miserable. And then, sure, like, you get arrested and they'll let you go the next day, but, like, it's going to ruin your afternoon, right? And so, if you do decline to, like, let them search your car, you do have to provide them, I believe, your ID. It depends on the state in which you're in. I've actually looked this up before, but, like, you do actually have to provide your ID and registration, license registration, I believe. Don't quote me on this. I'm not a lawyer, but I do believe that's correct. And yeah, if they ask to search your car, you just say, like, "No, I'm a proud American who believes in civil liberties, and I'm excited to exercise my my right to say no to you on this." Do you decline a breathalyzer? Great question. So When you get your driver's license in California, you have to sign something saying that you will not decline a breathalyzer. If you do decline a breathalyzer, they will assume that you are drunk driving and they will take your license away. So another more interesting question, even than that, is the DUI checkpoints, right? Like, do the cops have the right to stop an entire row of cars and with no reasonable suspicion breathalyze every person coming through there? And that's something I think's actually been upheld. I'm not sure about that. Again, I'm not a lawyer. Don't quote me on this. But I believe that actually got upheld on, if it's like a party weekend or like, I don't think they can do it just any day of the week. But like if it's New Year's Eve or something like that, and there's a reasonable chance that somebody's going to be drunk driving, I believe they can do the Dewey checkpoints. So again, don't quote me. Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day, New Year's Eve, yeah, all these things when people go out drunk driving. It's a bad idea. Don't drunk drive. Get an Uber. It's a lot cheaper to take an Uber than it is to get a new car. Yeah. So reasonable suspicion is a very low standard of evidence. Okay. Above that is probable cause. And what happens if you plead the fifth? Will you be in even more trouble? For what? In general, general good advice is just don't talk to a cop. Especially if they're like investigating you, just be like, I don't feel comfortable talking to you until I have a lawyer with me. It's a perfectly reasonable thing. And once you say that, they have to stop questioning you. Now, what they'll try and do is they'll try and head that off. They're going to try and say, well, before you get your lawyer, I just want to ask you a couple simple questions, and they try to cut you off, because once you say, I don't want to talk to you until I have a lawyer, they're not allowed to question you anymore. And again, my advice is not to be rude to them. My dad was certainly within his rights when he was rude to a Texas trooper that stopped him and was asking for a social security number, which he didn't have the right to do. My dad's like, you don't have the right to do that. And the trooper's like, I'm going to arrest you right now and throw you in jail. It's the weekend. The judge isn't in. You're going to spend all weekend in jail. And then you can argue this in front of a judge on Monday. And my dad's like, all right, here's my social security number, asshole. And then later on we called in. The guy was mentally unstable. He was actually trembling with rage when my dad told him, you don't have the right to ask for my social security number. And I was getting afraid the dude's gonna shoot my dad. This guy was visibly frothing at the mouth, and trembling with rage because my dad was he wasn't mouthing off to him. He's just I know my rights and you're in the wrong here. And I was like, Dad, please just give him your social security number. I don't want you murdered by the cops, And how does that guy become a cop? Great question. We called in and we're like, hey, this guy is out of control, and they're like, oh yeah, he's been having some emotional issues recently. Yeah. Thanks for letting us know. He's been having some temper problems. Why does this guy have a gun? Why are you sending this guy out if you know it's a problem? Oh my gosh. So, when you plead the fifth, will you be in more trouble? Just general good advice is just be like, I'm not, I would just feel, like I said, just be polite about it. I just would feel more comfortable talking to you. I want to have a lawyer, before I talk to you. Boom. So, crazy how scared we've gotten the people meant to protect us. And I'm not doing one of these all cops are bastards things either. I'm not. But that guy definitely was a bastard. I was just sitting there going holy smokes, he's screaming at my dad, and he's he was that was not a good situation. We were in the middle of nowhere in the freeways of Texas, and this guy, if he had shot us, you'd have buried our bodies and nobody would have seen anything. We're in the middle of nowhere. What happens if you answer questions and don't plead the fifth? Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You can, there's a great video you should watch called "Don't Talk to the Police," and this one right here. Yeah. post that on. I'll post that one on the chat channel. And it is between a defense lawyer and a cop. And so the cop is giving his perspective on it. The defense lawyer is giving his perspective on it. And both of them basically say, yeah, you can harm yourself by talking to the police. You can't help yourself. So talk to a lawyer first before you talk to the police. So you cannot get in trouble for pleading the fifth. It is, in fact, like in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, like they tried saying, him pleading the fifth was, if I'm getting my cases right, him pleading the fifth means that he was guilty. And the judge just like, no, you cannot do that. Don't do that. You cannot imply that somebody is guilty because they plead the fifth. That is not allowed. So probable cause 30%. Okay. So if you get a report that there's a green truck on Friant that they just saw somebody kidnap a kid, that's enough. Even though there might be lots of green trucks on Friant, that's enough for them to pull all the green trucks over and search them for the kid. Like you can't just do this because, right? Like, but if you have probable cause, you see a criminal run into a house, you see, you get a report that there's a crime going on right here. That's enough for the police to come out and at least investigate and do a search, right? And then if they find something, then they can turn that into an arrest. Now, civil cases, and we've been talking about criminal, civil cases are based on preponderance of evidence. And so civil cases are a 51% certainty, which we're not used to thinking about that way either, right? In a criminal case, you have to have proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the person's guilty. In a civil case, no. They just have to believe one person 1% more, than the other person, and then they will fine for them. Okay, so like, anytime it's a case of like this person says this person contradicts them. I made a website, it was great. He made a website, it was terrible quality. I don't want to pay him. No, my website's great. No, the website was terrible quality. The judge is like, okay, this is a he said, she said, kind of thing. Like they're just, okay, let me see the website myself. Yeah, okay, this looks fine to me. I'm going to rule for the plaintiff, right? This, they made a website, it looks fine, What are your objections to it? Oh, the links don't work. Okay, well, could you fix the link? And you just need a little bit more certainty for one person than the other, and you're like, I'm going to rule that way. Okay. Or you look at it like, oh, this is kind of garbage. It looks like somebody slapped together, web page and notepad in 30 seconds. I'm going to rule for the defendant. You don't need to have absolute convincing evidence. You just need to have a little bit more than the other guy, which is why documentation is so important whenever you do anything legally. Anytime I work with clients, everything goes through email. That's why I have a record of everything. So like when Maricopa County tried suing me, or not tried suing me, they tried not paying me. They breached the contract. I had all of my evidence. No, everything I did, I said, here it is. Here's the things that you guys said. And then all of a sudden you're just like, I'm not going to pay you. And so I sued him and won. And not only won, but I got all my legal fees covered, and they paid out the rest of the contract in its entirety without me having to do any work. I'm like, screw you, Maricopa, Arizona, Phoenix, burn in hell, And, I won because I had the documentation on my side. It's very important when you guys work in the real world to don't mess with me. No, like I do what I say. Like if you hire me to do X, Y, and Z, I do X, Y, and Z. And if I do X, Y, and Z, and then you're like, I'm not going to pay you. Yeah, then we're gonna have a lawsuit, and here's my documentation. Here's your documentation, and my documentation's better than yours, and so I get paid out. So it's not a matter of messing with me. It's not a threat. Like it was extremely stressful to go through that because I'm suing a county. I'm suing Phoenix essentially, and. And I had to fly out there and I had to hire a lawyer. And like, it was incredibly stressful. I don't want to do that, but they were trying to screw me over, and I'm not going to roll over because, they just want to screw me over on something. Okay. Then finally we have beyond a reasonable doubt. So if you want to convict somebody of a criminal offense, you have to be about 90% certain that the person did. Okay. You can't have evidence is key. Yeah. And document, like whenever you work with clients, document, what you've done. And email is a great way for that. You just don't delete your emails. Don't delete your emails to the clients. All those go into a folder, archive everything, Now you've got documentation for every correspondence you have. So beyond a reasonable doubt, it's 90% certainty. Okay. If you're going to convict somebody of a crime, it's 90, and, it's not like a hard, like 90, it's like in that ballpark. So like, let's take the Kyle Rittenhouse case, right? Last year, Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty of murder in Kenosha. He went to a protest carrying a gun. And so the prosecutor, and then he was attacked, right? Like, so Kyle Rittenhouse didn't go around shooting people. He was attacked by multiple people and shot people only after he was attacked. And so the defense was saying it's reasonable self-defense. Like, the first person he shot was a guy who was literally pushing a dumpster fire at police. And Kyle Rittenhouse came up with a fire extinguisher and put it out. And then the guy's like, I'm going to kill you for that. Okay? And then later on, the dude is hiding in ambush for Kyle. Kyle walks down the street. The dude busts out of ambush, tries attacking Kyle. Kyle runs for it. The dude throws something at Kyle. He's a bigger dude than Kyle Rittenhouse was, chases him down. And when he's about 4 feet away, about to hit him, Kyle shoots him and kills him. Any reasonable person would say that was self-defense, And so the prosecution had to make the case that you lose the right to self-defense if you provoke a fight. And so the whole prosecution's case sort of hinged upon that Kyle was provoking a fight by doing things like putting out a fire, by showing up as a counter protester to a protest. But did that hit beyond reasonable doubt to make it murder? And the jury was like, no, it's not. With the other people, one of the guys was like trying to brain him with a skateboard. Kyle shoots him, kills him. Another guy was literally grabbing a gun, and he testified on stage, Kyle didn't shoot me until I pointed the gun at him. And then Kyle shot him in the arm. There's no person who would say that's not self-defense, right? Like, a guy's pulling a gun on you. You don't know if they're going to shoot you or not. Like, any reasonable person would say that was self-defense. And so the prosecution had to say, well, he was provoking all of these people by his existence, by just being there. And that did not meet the beyond a reasonable doubt standard that he committed murder. And so the jury quite reasonably found him not guilty. Now, in the media, the Kyle Rittenhouse, who took him to court? The DA. And the reason why the DA took him to trial is a great question. Like, maybe that could be your question for the capstone essay, because the way it was portrayed in the media, by the way, like, this is, again, why you want to hit primary sources. I watched a lot of the trial, live. The media reporting on it was just all over the place. You have Tucker Carlson making Kyle Rittenhouse out to be a hero, whereas in reality, it probably wasn't a very wise thing to do to show up at a violent protest, with a gun, to be on the other side. I don't think Kyle Rittenhouse is a particularly wise individual. I'm not really defending him. He didn't commit murder, clearly, but I'm not really defending his actions. But if you watch CNN, they were just he's a stone cold killer. They just showed up to murder people, and completely inaccurate reporting. And that's why, again, primary source reporting, primary sources are the gold standard. You actually have to watch the video footage of him being attacked and determine, okay, was this the action of somebody who was here to murder people? No, he's running away, and the other dude is bigger than him. He's throwing things at him. He ambushed him. He's coming at him. And the prosecution's like, well, he should have just gone mano on mano. He should have just punched the guy that was 3 times his size. And again, no reasonable person would say that a little teenager should go mano a mano with a dude that has screamed at him, I'm going to murder you, and is currently charging him at night. Right. He was absolutely justified in self-defense, though. And so why he was taken to court, that's a great question. And, my theory is it was political. I don't think that's too unreasonable a claim to make. But, the DA, would probably defend himself saying, it was up to the jury to decide. It's not my decision if he was a murderer. We left it up to the jury, and justice was done. I don't know. I don't think that he would have been prosecuted under other circumstances. With all the video footage there was of it, like there was no question on the facts of the matter. So why did he go to the protest in the first place? He was there to protect the property because there had been riots and burning, like they destroyed hundreds of cars and things like that. So he was there to essentially provide security to like an auto lot, to keep the cars from being burned during the protests. Again, not exactly a wise move from a 17-year-old. I don't think that he was the wisest individual in that circumstance, but it certainly wasn't murder. And if you watch the trial, there's no doubt that he was not guilty, right? But if you watch the media, yeah, the dude's a straight up bigot, racist, murderer, whatever, and that's why you need to hit primary sources. So that's basically the lecture for today. If we lack evidence, you just have to have a neutral stance on it, right? You can't assume that it's true. You can't assume that it's false. You have to have a neutral stance. Are there aliens in another galaxy? We have no way of observing them. We have no way of knowing. I don't know. Just saying I don't know is fine too. We don't have evidence. I don't know what the answer is. I'm neutral on it. That's fine too. But for your essay, you're going to use these 10%, 30%, 80%. I am 60% convinced that X, Y, and Z. And that's the lecture today is really what your capstone essay should be like. Like, this is how confident I am. Use those qualifiers. Okay, people. So qualify your sentences, make yourself academic, embrace subtlety and nuance. Don't be like the media that blows everything out of proportion, 100%, 0%. Be as accurate as you can. Be precise in your speech. Okay? And that is it for today, guys. I will see you guys on Friday, and we will talk more about programming. It's been a while since we've done some programming, so we'll do some more programming on Friday. All right. Peace out.